I want to be clear. I worked alongside Pete Hegseth on a project that he ran called Veterans for Freedom, Vets for Freedom, in 2008, 9, and 10. And these are political cycles in which the small nonprofit organization that he was running was trying to advocate for continuing the surge strategy in Iraq and for continuing along the... This is at the time when Pete Hegseth was really a neocon, right? He was supportive of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I watched him run an organization very poorly, lose the confidence of donors. The organization ultimately folded and was forced to merge with another organization who individuals felt could run and manage funds on behalf of donors more responsibly than Pete could. That was my experience with him, and we have not stayed in close touch.
No, but I mean, that's important. That's at the management level.
These are management. Yeah, this was a small nonprofit full of maybe less than 10 individuals with a budget less than $5 million, $5 to $10 million, and he couldn't do that properly. I don't know how he's going to run an organization with an $857 billion budget and 3 million individuals, based on what I saw in those years.
So, Claire, that's Margaret Hoover in an interview with Aaron Burnett over on CNN. And I just want to underscore what she says. I watched him run an organization poorly, lose the confidence of donors. The organization ultimately folded and was forced to merge with another organization whose individuals could run and manage the funds on behalf of donors. I mean, in the instance of being the United States Secretary of Defense, the donors are the taxpayers, right? And the thing you mismanage is the deployment of active duty troops. Have you heard from any of your former colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle who are worried about those disqualifying attributes?
I think all of that. We have not, the conversations I've had, we have not talked specifically about Pete Hegseth yet. I can tell you there's a great deal of concern about the kind of nominees he is making in terms of their role of advice and consent, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, or this ridiculous Kash Patel nomination for the FBI. There seems to be, I mean, Donald Trump is really kind of overplaying his hand here. He didn't get 50% of the American vote. He got less than 50% of the American vote. And he is going to the very ends of the earth in terms of extremism to fill these roles. And I think he's doing it based on who he thinks can talk well on television. He thinks that's the only thing you have to do, because frankly, that's what he does. He doesn't really manage much. He talks on television, watches television, talks on television, and does his thing on his social media app. But I do want to circle back to a point that my colleague made a few minutes ago about the fact that this is a volunteer force. If you have scandals at the Department of Defense, if you have a leader that has engaged in public drunkenness and dishonorable behavior, and frankly, remember, even committing adultery is a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Much less serial adultery, much less dancing on the stage with strippers. These are all violations of the military code that you can, in fact, be prosecuted for under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. How are they going to recruit people to come into this military? How are young men and women going to go, yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to lay my life on the line to follow that guy into battle. It's a real problem. I mean, character and integrity are so important in law enforcement. They're even in some ways more important, if you can imagine, in the military, because all of these organizations depend on people signing up to do these various, very, very dangerous jobs.
I mean, Charlie, it has us in this stupid spot of trying to figure out what the hell was Trump thinking. But as Claire's talking, I mean, Trump won. It is his prerogative to pick whomever he wants. But why not put Tom Cotton atop the Pentagon? And why not put, if you want your, I mean, Rick Grenell worked at the UN. He had an intelligence post. Why not put him instead of Tulsi Gabbard? And at the FBI, I mean, John Cornyn was, I mean, there are people who are ride or die Trumpers who are not manifestly lacking character and qualifications. What do you make of what Claire's pointing out, this slate?
Well, there's an advantage, perhaps, to lacking character and qualifications, and I'm reluctant to crawl down the rabbit hole of what Donald Trump is in fact thinking. But what he seems to be looking for is not competence, is not stature, is not any kind of gravitas. He is looking for people who talk well on television. But what he most wants is he wants loyalty. Let's talk about some of these euphemisms that are being used for, Pete Hegseth and for Kash Patel. They are loyalists. Well, they're not loyal to the Constitution. They're not loyal to the institutions. They're not loyal to the country. They are loyal to Donald Trump. These are men and women who will never be in the Oval Office and tell Donald Trump, no, you cannot do this, or Mr. President, that would be a violation of the law. So Donald Trump is actually very consciously choosing second, third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier characters because he knows that he can control them, he can squash them, he can bend them to his will. So, of all the things we're talking about, Pete Hegseth, his incompetence and his lack of character, if Donald Trump says, I want you to deploy members of the U.S. Army on the streets of American cities to go after other Americans, does anyone think that Pete Hegseth is the man who's going to say no, that he's ever going to defy Donald Trump? So when we talk about the term loyalty, understand that he is trying to create a government that is loyal to him as a person. And by the way, yes, all presidents have the prerogative to choose their cabinet, but our system of government also says that the United States Senate has the power of advice and consent. He is not entitled, no matter what percentage of the vote he gets, to put someone absolutely unfit into positions of trust and honor in the United States government without the co-equal branches of government having a say. And so I think that, this is what Donald Trump is doing. And also, there's part of it, Nicolle, that what almost feels like Donald Trump is just giving this gigantic middle finger to the institutions that he now controls, that he wants to destroy. It is such an insult to the Department of Justice to name someone like Matt Gaetz, an insult to the FBI to name Kash Patel, an insult to the Department of Defense to name Pete Hegseth. So we are getting this giant middle finger from Donald Trump. You can interpret that any way you like.
Allison, what everyone is saying, I guess, is something that was revealed by all the reporting and book writing from the first term, which is that Trump wants, in the case of the military, generals who are loyal to him. He told General John Kelly, his chief of staff, that he wanted people, quote, more like Hitler's generals, more like German generals, and he pressed him and he meant Hitler's. What does that mean for the layers under where Trump stops having his say, right? So he picks Hegseth, he picks a couple of people beneath him, or he orders a purge. But you come down the line to people that may actually have voted for Donald Trump, may have been his choice in the election, but who have as a line the Constitution and the law and refuse to break the law for him. What kind of friction does that set up inside the military?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, as a reminder, those general officers and admirals are also confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So there's a lot of oversight by all corners of our government to make sure that the right people are in different positions, whether it's a political appointee who's Secretary of Defense or a commander who's overseeing our operations in the Middle East right now. But those individuals don't need any more you call it points of friction, Nicolle. They need stability from the top down within the institution that they serve in, because they have to worry about instability in the rest of the world. And so it is absolutely a national security issue to ensure that we have steady leadership that is leadership with character atop the Department of Defense, because our men and women serving in